Welcome to the Sport Psychologist's Perspective. This quote here from the Canadian Association for Advancement of Women in Sport and Physical Activity defines the role that sport can play in our society. Although this quote is referencing a Canadian view of sport, this description can easily be applied to sports culture all over the world. It is this capacity that sport has to reflect our current society and values that makes the role of the sports psychologist so valuable. It is the functional and positive aspects of sport that is often the reason for encouraging children's participation. However, the darker side of sport is often avoided. Lely points to the darker side when discussing the large body of research that indicates that competitive sporting environments open up a unique social interaction context that offers the possibility for sexual abuse and exploitation to take place. Lee often goes on to highlight that in her view, it is the power invested and given to the coach that is a specific danger area. MacDonald points to research that shows a 40% increase in domestic violence on nights of state of origin compared to other Wednesday nights in those areas. This research highlights the link between sport and the negative effect it can have on the fans watching. It is not only the fans that engage in domestic violence. Repetto presents stats from America in which between 1991 and 2003, 164 elite athletes were involved in 168 sexual assault allegations. The challenging aspect of this data is that only 6 cases resulted in conviction, whereas within normal population there is a 53% conviction rate for sexual assault. Repetto suggests that due to the role model and idealisation of elite athletes, people don't want to see them get convicted for domestic violent acts. To explore how sport affects domestic violence, it is important to explore the interaction between the player and the culture that is created through playing sport. A known challenge that athletes can often encounter is issues around body image and striving for a particular body that the sport demands. In their research into athletic participation and intimate partner violence victimisation, Milner and Barker found that those athletes that engage in unhealthy behaviours such as alcohol abuse, steroid use and eating disorders were at a higher risk of experiencing domestic violence. In particular, women with eating disorders were more likely to experience sexual harassment and victimisation than other athletes. In Owen's case study into sexual abuse in sport, she provides extracts of writings by a victim whose weight and appearance were used to continue to groom and control her into a domestic violent relationship. The quote here is from Bella. She's a 16-year-old girl with her early 30s coach Ray and his wife Sarah. They're away at a tournament. Ray attempts to rape Bella later that night and then blames her for the ending of his marriage when Sarah discovers this. Both the personal account and research findings point to the culture within sport to seek perfection regardless of the health concerns, and that this opens up the opportunity for predators to manipulate often vulnerable people. Sawyer et al. Examined how rape culture were manifesting amongst college-age athletes. They did this via their examination of rape myth acceptance, such as the belief that rape victims are to blame or that they lie about being raped. Although they did find that rape myth acceptance was found in higher rates with male athletes than female athletes, they found that female athletes that competed at the highest divisions also held higher rates of rape myth acceptance than the female athletes at lower divisions. This finding suggests that the high competitive groups in sport may be the groups that are holding and maintaining a cultural acceptance of domestic violence. Milner and Barker suggest that it is not the organised sport that is holding this culture, but actually the athletic identification that is holding the violent behaviour. Milner and Barker reference research that links the jock identity and not necessarily athletic participation with more frequent violent behaviour. With many sports having a higher percentage of male participants than female, and it being found that male participants hold higher rates of acceptance of beliefs that maintain domestic violence behaviour, it is that women participating in sport, especially at the higher levels, that place themselves in a higher proximity to people that hold views that may lead to increased chance of experiencing victimisation and violent behaviours. Women in sport are often required to present as less feminine or to conform with masculine ideology to be accepted or tolerated. Johnson found that college sport initiation practices held sexist and homophobic themes for both female and male athletes. Hills and Walker discuss how sport can be used at a community level to initiate a conversation about addressing issues in the wider community. Using sports participation in the presence of a role model, conversations can begin, for example, about respect to your teammates and opponent, and then be extended to respect for their partners and the wider community. In this way, sport can create the bridge to begin exploring sensitive issues. In this space, a sports psychologist can play the role of both identifying a topic that is appropriate and needs to be addressed, as well as playing facilitator of the initial conversations. Using their local knowledge of the sporting dynamic and challenges unique to the group, alongside their scientist practitioner approach and skill set, the sports psychologist is well positioned to explore positive change at a local group level, which has the potential to influence other groups at a larger scale. As role models in sport have large amounts of power to influence views and beliefs, it is important that the sports psychologist identifies the right people to act in these roles. To do this, they rely on their knowledge and skills in understanding behaviour, motivations, and personality, with the aim to best support potential role models to have positive impact. Multiple past research has demonstrated the link between maintaining in the domestic abusive relationship and low self-esteem. An example of this is the study by Carson et al., in which it was found that the lower self-esteem was a risk factor for partner abuse, but high self-esteem was a protective factor against partner abuse. Milner also cites research that links higher self-esteem with a tendency to have more secure relationships. It is here that the benefit for women participating in sport to reduce risks and increase protective factors against domestic abuse. Sport builds opportunity to engage in positive self-esteem growth, positive coping strategies, and social connection and support. With sport building self-esteem, participation offers the opportunity for women to develop a self-concept that is not limited to social expectations of gender, which non-athletes are more likely to be limited by. Engaging in sport has been shown to reduce domestic abuse for women through self-esteem and identity development and exposure to positive role modelling. It is also found in research that level of education will impact the risk factors for women and domestic violence experience. In this, it is important to note that for many universities and colleges around the world, sport groups and sport participation is often a key part of the higher education experience. Combining the increase in education and opportunity to engage in social sport reduces the risk factors for women to experience domestic violence. Keeping in mind that the highest competitive levels of sport will reduce some of the protective factors. In this area, it is important for the sports psychologist to partner with universities to identify potential campus culture issues that are linked with increased domestic violence towards women. In this way, the sports psychologist can consult on ways to not only increase with female sports participation, but through sport participation begin to address specific campus issues through role modelling these for changing views, increased focus on building positive coping strategies and self-esteem and a culture of social connection. On top of these roles, there are a number of other areas that are recommended for sports psychologists to engage in. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.